There are 7 small moments in your day that are quietly deciding who you become, and almost no one notices them happening. You don't need a new life. You need 7 ordinary minutes, repeated on purpose. The Stoics didn't chase happiness. They built it, one small habit at a time, and most of those habits take less than 5 minutes. There are 2 versions of you living the same life. One of them wakes up and reaches for the phone before his feet even touch the floor. He lets the first notification decide his mood. He lets a stranger's comment decide his worth. He moves through the day reacting to traffic, to tone of voice, to the number on a screen, and by the time he lies back down, he couldn't tell you a single thing he actually chose today. Everything just happened to him. You know this version of yourself. You've lived inside him for years. And here's the part almost no one tells you: you weren't born this way. Nobody is born reactive. You learned it. Somewhere along the way, the world trained you to flinch first and think second, to let your peace depend on things that were never yours to control in the first place. That's not a character flaw. That's a habit. And what's learned can be unlearned. But there's another version of you. Quieter. Doesn't announce itself. He's not waiting somewhere out in the future, after the promotion, after the better year, after you finally figure it out. He's already here. Underneath the noise, underneath the notifications, underneath the reacting. Steady. Unhurried. The kind of calm that doesn't come from nothing happening, but from knowing exactly what's his to carry and what isn't. The Stoics had a word for this, not a personality, not a mood. A practice. Marcus Aurelius, a man who ruled an empire and buried his own children and still found a way to sit with himself in silence every single night, wrote it plainly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Not power over the world. Power over the one thing that was always yours to begin with. So let's be honest about something before we go any further. This isn't going to be a video about mindset. Mindset is a feeling, and feelings don't survive a bad morning. What you're about to learn isn't a feeling at all. It's 7 small, repeated choices, quiet, unglamorous, almost invisible from the outside. That slowly, without announcement, without applause, turn the reactive self into the steady one. Not overnight. Not through one big decision. Through 7 ordinary moments, practiced on purpose, until they stop being habits, and start being you. Today, you get all 7. So where do we begin? Not with motivation. Motivation won't be there on the mornings you need it most. We begin with the first habit. The one that doesn't cost you money, or time, or effort. It costs you nothing but silence. Before we get to the first habit, I need you to sit with something for a moment. Not the solution yet, just the cost. Because you won't feel the weight of what you're about to learn until you feel the weight of what you've been carrying without it. Think about the last 7 days. Not the highlight reel, the actual texture of them. How many of those days did you choose? And how many just happened to you? You woke up already behind. You checked the phone and your mood was set by someone else's headline, someone else's message, someone else's mood bleeding into yours before you'd even had a single thought of your own. You made it through meetings you don't remember, conversations you can't recall the substance of, 100 small decisions made on autopilot because there was no room left to make them any other way. And by the time night came, you weren't tired from effort. You were tired from scattering. From being pulled in 14 directions by 14 things that will mean nothing in a year. That's not a bad week. That's most weeks. And here's what nobody says out loud. That exhaustion isn't from doing too much. It's from deciding too much, too fast, with no structure underneath you to catch the decisions before they turned into chaos. So we tell ourselves the story we've been handed. I just need more motivation. I need to want it more. I need more willpower. And maybe you've tried that. White-knuckled your way through a few good days, felt the surge, felt unstoppable, and then watched it evaporate by Thursday. And when it evaporated, you didn't blame the method. You blamed yourself. You decided you were the problem. Undisciplined. Weak. Not built for this. But what if that was never true? Willpower was never the problem. Willpower is a spark. It flares hot, and it flares fast, and it was never designed to burn for weeks at a time. No one is disciplined by sheer force of feeling, not for long. What you were missing wasn't more fire. It was structure, something steady enough to hold the fire in place after the feeling leaves. Motivation isn't missing from your life. It was never reliable to begin with. It was never supposed to be the foundation. It was only ever supposed to be the spark that lights something more durable. And this is where it stops being about productivity and starts being about something much heavier. Because every scattered day, every reactive decision, every moment you handed over to autopilot, that's not just a wasted Tuesday. That's a vote. A quiet, invisible vote for who you're becoming. Nobody wakes up one day and decides to become anxious, reactive, scattered, resentful of their own life. It happens the way rust happens, one unexamined day at a time, so slowly you never notice the moment it took hold. You don't fall apart. You drift apart. And the frightening part isn't the bad days. It's that you could keep living exactly like this, quietly, for another 10 years, and nothing dramatic would ever force you to stop and look. Unless something interrupts the drift. That's what these 7 moments are. Not motivation. Not a mindset shift. Interruptions, small, deliberate points in your day where you stop drifting long enough to choose who you're going to be, on purpose, instead of by accident. There are 7 of them. Most people go their whole lives and stumble onto 1, maybe 2, completely by accident. A good habit they built without knowing why it worked, never realizing there were 6 more standing right beside it the entire time. Today, you don't have to stumble onto them. You get all 7. Starting now. Habit 1. Picture the moment you open your eyes. Not the moment you get up, the moment just before. That half second of nothing, before the day has a name yet, before it has a shape. For most people, that half second lasts about 2 seconds. Then the hand moves. Not out of hunger, not out of thought, out of muscle memory, reaching for the phone before the mind has even finished waking up. And in that instant, something quiet and important gets stolen from you. Because the first voice you hear today won't be yours. It'll be a headline. A message. Someone else's morning, someone else's opinion, someone else's emergency, dropped into your mind before it even had the chance to speak first. So let's be clear about what this first habit actually is, because it's not what you think. This isn't about waking up early. Waking up at 5 doesn't matter if the first thing you do at 5 is hand your mind over to a screen. This is about something much smaller, and much harder, waking up before the world speaks first. A few minutes. No phone. No noise. Just you, and whatever your own mind has to say before anyone else gets a vote. Marcus Aurelius understood this 2,000 years before notifications existed. Each morning, before the demands of an empire reached him, he'd remind himself of the kind of day he intended to have and the kind of man he intended to be in it, not reacting to what the day would bring, but deciding, first, who was going to meet it. Because here's the truth underneath all of this. Whoever speaks to your mind first, owns it that day. Habit 2. Now go to the other end of that same day. It's night. The lights are low. And if you're honest, you probably couldn't tell someone what actually happened today. Not really. Not the parts that mattered. The days blur. Monday folds into Thursday folds into last month, and none of it gets examined, so none of it gets understood, and what doesn't get understood can never be improved. This is where the second habit lives. And I want to be precise about what it is, because the word, journaling, makes people picture something soft, a diary, feelings scrawled in the dark, therapeutic but directionless. This isn't that. This is an audit. The Stoics didn't write to feel better. They wrote to see clearly. Seneca described ending each day by asking himself, plainly, without flinching, what did I do well today? Where did I fail? What would I do differently? Not as punishment, as inventory. A few honest lines. What moved you off center today? Where did you handle it well? Where didn't you? Because you can't improve a day you never examine. Habit 3. Here's a moment you already know intimately. Someone says something sharp. A message lands wrong. Something breaks, or stalls, or falls apart 5 minutes before you needed it to work. And in that instant, something in your chest tightens, and your mouth is already moving before your mind has caught up. That's the moment the third habit lives in. Not the morning, not the evening, but that razor-thin sliver of time between something happening to you and something happening because of you. Understand something important here. Discipline was never about controlling the world around you. You can't control the traffic, the tone of the email, the person who cuts you off in the parking lot. What you can control is a half second, the half second between the event and your response to it. Epictetus taught this as clearly as anyone ever has. It is never the event itself that disturbs us, but our judgment about the event. Two people can face the exact same delay, the exact same insult, the exact same disaster, and walk away completely differently, because one of them paused long enough to choose, and the other didn't. Picture it like a door. Between what happens and what you do next, there's a door. Most people never even know it's there. They just walk straight through, reacting before they've even touched the handle. Between what happens and what you do, there's a door. Most people never knock. Habit 4. The fourth habit is the one people resist the most, because it asks you to do something that goes against everything modern life has trained you to want. We've built entire lives around comfort. Temperature controlled, same-day delivery, convenience at every turn, and there's nothing wrong with comfort itself. But something happens to a person who never, ever chooses discomfort on purpose. They become fragile. Soft in a way that doesn't show up until the day comfort isn't available anymore, and it never stays available forever. The cold, unglamorous truth is that the version of you who has never voluntarily struggled will not know what to do the day struggle finds him anyway. So the fourth habit is this: on purpose, in small doses, you choose the harder thing. The cold shower instead of the warm one. The walk instead of the ride. Skipping a meal you didn't need. Sitting with boredom instead of numbing it. Small, chosen discomforts, not suffering for its own sake, but rehearsal for the hard days that are coming anyway, whether you're ready or not. Seneca used to practice living, for a few days at a time, as though he were poor, plain food, rough clothes, asking himself the whole time, is this really the thing I was so afraid of? Not to suffer. To prove to himself that the thing he feared losing had less power over him than he thought. Comfort makes you soft. Small hardship, chosen on purpose, makes you ready. 4 habits down. But the next 3 aren't about your morning, and they're not about your evening. They're about something almost no one ever trains at all: your mind's relationship with time, with other people, and with death itself. Habit 5. Think about where your energy actually goes on an average day. Not your time, your energy. The kind that drains you without you noticing until you're lying in bed, wrung out, unable to say exactly what took so much out of you. Some of it went to a comment someone made, one you've replayed 4 times since. Some of it went to an outcome you were waiting on, a reply, a result, a decision made by someone else, somewhere else, entirely out of your hands. Some of it went backward into a moment from years ago you can't change and never will. And by the time you notice, you've spent an entire day's worth of energy on things that were never yours to move in the first place. Here's the 5th habit, and it's deceptively simple. Every morning, before the day gets its hands on you, sort it into 2 piles. One pile is what's actually yours, your effort, your attention, your choices, your response. The other pile is everything else. Other people's opinions, outcomes you don't control, results that depend on 100 variables that have nothing to do with you. And here is the discipline. you only carry the first pile. Epictetus opened his entire philosophy with exactly this line: some things are up to us, and some things are not. Our judgments, our choices, our actions, ours. Everything else, other people's opinions of us, our reputation, the outcome of our efforts, not ours. He said the wise man doesn't waste his strength trying to move what was never his to move. Because peace was never the absence of problems. It's the absence of problems that were never yours to solve. Habit 6. Now go somewhere quieter, somewhere most people don't like to look too closely at. The running tally in the back of your mind that measures your life against everyone else's. The house. The relationship. The body. The career. The version of someone's life you saw for 4 seconds on a screen, filtered and framed and completely disconnected from anything real, and somehow it still left a mark. A quiet, persistent hum underneath the day that whispers, not enough. Behind. Missing something they have. That hum has a name, and it survives on one single fuel source: comparison. So the 6th habit isn't about feeling grateful. Feelings are unreliable. You already learned that with motivation. This is about something sturdier. Gratitude, practice here, isn't a soft feeling you wait to arrive. It's a discipline. A deliberate, daily accounting of what's already yours, not to feel good, but to starve comparison of the only fuel it runs on. Marcus Aurelius, ruling over more wealth and power than almost anyone in history, still wrote reminders to himself to be satisfied with what was allotted to him, and to treat everything else as noise. Not because he lacked ambition, because he understood that ambition without gratitude curdles into a hunger that never, ever fills. You cannot envy and appreciate in the same breath. Every single day, you choose which one gets to run it. Habit 7. And now the last one. The one most people spend their whole lives avoiding, because it sounds, at first, like the darkest habit on this list. It isn't. Live long enough on autopilot, and you start operating on a quiet, unspoken assumption that there will always be more time, more mornings, more chances, more later. That assumption is so deeply buried you never even notice you're making it, and it's the single biggest reason ordinary days get wasted without a second thought. Because why would you treasure something you assume is infinite? So here is the 7th habit, and I need you to hear it exactly as it's meant, not grim. Clarifying. Each day, spend a moment, just a moment, remembering that this day is not guaranteed. Not as a threat. As a lens. The Stoics called it memento mori, remember that you will die, and they didn't use it to frighten themselves into despair. They used it to burn away everything that didn't matter, so what remained was only what mattered most. Marcus Aurelius wrote it to himself like a man setting an alarm for his own attention. You could leave this life right now. Let that determine what you do, and say, and think. You don't fear death by remembering it. You finally start living because of it. And here is the part that changes everything you just learned. The stillness in the morning. The audit at night. The pause before reacting. The discomfort chosen on purpose. The sorting of what's yours to carry. The gratitude that starves comparison. Every single one of them was never really about mornings, or evenings, or reactions, or comfort at all. They were rehearsal. Rehearsal for this. For remembering that the days you're spending so carelessly are the only ones you get. So let's be honest, one last time, about what all of this really is. You are not lazy. You are not behind. You are not missing some secret that everyone else somehow got handed and you didn't. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were just untrained, reacting because no one ever showed you the door between event and response. Scattered because no one ever handed you the audit. Comparing because no one ever taught you that gratitude was a discipline, not a mood. Wasting days because no one ever made you sit, even for a moment, with how few of them you actually get. That's not a character flaw. That's just 7 moments you haven't practiced yet. Not once. Not by accident. On purpose. On repeat. Morning after morning, night after night, pause after pause, until they stop feeling like a list you're checking, and start feeling like nothing at all, because that's what a habit becomes when it's finally, truly yours. It disappears into you. It stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. The stillness before the world speaks. The honest audit at night. The pause before the reaction. The discomfort chosen on purpose. The sorting of what's yours and what never was. The gratitude that starves the comparison. The daily reminder that this day was never guaranteed. 7 moments. Repeated until they're invisible. Repeated until they're just you. This was never about becoming someone new. This isn't self-improvement. It's self-remembering. Go back, for a second, to the 2 versions of you we talked about at the very start. The reactive one. Pulled by notifications, moods, other people's opinions, never quite choosing anything, just absorbing whatever the day handed him. And the quiet one. Steady. Already inside you. Not waiting somewhere out in the future. Waiting right here, this whole time, for you to stop looking for him and start practicing him instead. That's what these 7 moments were. Not a program. Not a personality transplant. Small, ordinary interruptions, a few quiet minutes here, a pause there. Placed at exactly the right points in your day to let the steady version of you finally get a word in. Those 7 ordinary minutes, that's the fire we talked about at the start. It was never missing. It was just waiting to be fed. So here's all of it, without the list, without the recap. 7 habits. 5 minutes each. One version of you, quietly building day after day. Not because one morning changes everything, but because 1,000 ordinary mornings, practiced on purpose, eventually stop being habits at all. They just become who you are. If even one of these 7 spoke to something real in you, there's another video on the screen right now that goes even deeper into it. Let it be your next step.